Wait, the Cuba mission is going to worship today, right? No idea. This is going to wing it. So,
Like this one is opening, or do you want this one to be opening?
yeah, don't forget to open it.
Okay, stand, please. Please stand, yeah.
Father, we'd ask you to bless this worship. We'd ask you to bless the Cuba group, and thank you for the opportunity we could go on mission trips. We'd ask that you would speak to Mr. O and all those who will be speaking, and hopefully we can receive a blessing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Good morning, students. Good to be back. Good to see you. Good morning. I missed you bad. I'm glad to see all of you guys. It's thank you for your prayers for my father. We thought he was going to die. The doctor said he won't last until like 3 more days. So all the children rushed there, and we spent 4 days together. We prayed. We saw that improving. So he's still paralyzed. His legs. He's dragging his legs. He speaks with like slurred speech, like "Good morning, how are you?" That's how he speaks. But thank you for your prayers. We are happy he's improving. So, Cuba mission trip, a report will be in 3 sections. Anybody knows why? Absolutely right. It's one team that flew on the airplane, but as soon as we arrived in Cuba, this team of 14 people were split in smaller groups and went to 3 different locations to do evangelistic meetings in 3 small towns. Some of them were a little larger, sort of like what should I compare it? Like Colfax? Somewhere as small as, I don't even know what town would be small enough around here, but somewhere small towns, like one major street and 3 extra streets, that's it. Somewhere a little larger, but 3 different teams went to 3 different locations, and today we have this smallest team, but the powerful evangelistic team of 3 people, right? Yes, and that team is presenting today, so please come up and share with us.
Buenos días.
Buenos días. Is he gonna be Spanish?
Alright, let's start with another prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the chance that we have to share about the work that you did in Cuba. We pray that you'll bless this presentation, help us to be able to have the right words to say, and that everyone listening may be blessed by hearing the message. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So first we'll have our short 1-minute video that we made for 3 AGM. This is the one that has the yeet in it, so if you're mad, I'm sorry.
He who has the Son has life, and he who does not have the Son does not have life. We had the opportunity to share the hope that is found in Jesus Christ with the people of Cuba. Along with 8 other students and 5 staff from Weimar Academy, I had the opportunity to take part in one of 3 evangelistic campaigns that we held in the Pinar del Rio province in western Cuba.
I hated the idea of preaching. But when we got there, we visited people and got to know them better. It was a very warm and friendly environment. And when it came time to actually give presentations, it wasn't that bad after all.
While we were there, there's this one officer who wanted us to be deported because we were talking about the Bible and Christianity. But there's this other officer who said, no, stop. These people, they're doing good in this town. There's so many bad things going on in Mantua morally, and these people are talking about God. They're talking about how to change our life with the Bible. Let them stay. They're doing a good work. That really touched me, and it makes me remember that even in a closed-off country as Cuba, there's still people that are receptive. They just have open hearts and willing hearts, and that's all that Christ needs.
The seminary. There's an Adventist seminary there in the capital city of Havana. We took this picture there in front of that with our team and our nice mission trip shirts. This is the before picture. Do we have the after picture later? Yeah, that's the after picture at our retreat at the end. Anyway.
It's significantly chubbier because they fed us well.
Oh yeah. Actually lost weight there.
Alright, so this was at the beginning. And we went, our entire team met in Havana first, and then we separated for various individual towns. And so our team went to the little town of Pilotos. It was about a 2-hour drive to the capital. And this is us with our team there in Pilotos. We have the Bible worker / pastor and his wife, also our translators, and people doing cooking and cleaning and all the other important things.
I'll just add, up there in the gray shirt, that's Jesus. That was actually my translator last year in La Pedrera, so that was
How about the bright green shirt?
Oh, that is Noel. That's the husband of the cook. He was helping with food as well. I see.
So, here's a picture of the towns, one of the streets there in Pilotos. You can see the horse-drawn wagon there. There were also cars there as well, but lots of people using horses and wagons, or just walking. So this is a picture of the meetings that we had. Now in Cuba, the government is not allowing new church buildings to be built. So what the Adventist Church is doing is buying houses and converting them into churches. So this is one of those house churches. That's where we were holding the meetings. Wilfredo, that's the man standing there. He and his wife live in this house, and this is where they have the meetings. So in our adult meetings, we had roughly 20 visitors every night, in addition to church members. And in the kids' meetings, we had around 30 kids each night. One night we had closer to 50.
Wow.
But we had pretty good attendance for both. And we kind of traded off. Jonathan did most of the children's meetings. Joey and I did most of the adult presentations, but we also rotated a bit, so we each got to do some of everything. And Joey has a story to tell about some decisions that were made.
So this is at the end. We had 2 baptisms at the end, but that's kind of jumping ahead. So I'll start from the very beginning. On the day that we left, I came to the AC to wave off New Mexico as they were leaving. And there's Matthew. So I came over to Matthew to say bye, and he was talking on the phone to Michael. So I talked to Michael for a little bit, and his challenge to me was to pray big. He said, God, we serve God, and He's not limited by what we think is practical. And so I'm like, okay, cool, thank you, whatever, kind of generic. I kind of set it aside, and I didn't think about it until later. But then about a third of the way through the campaign, that thought came back to me, and I was thinking about 2 Kings 13, there's King Joash, and Elisha the prophet is dying. He comes to see Elisha. He says, what should I do? Elisha says, open the window, shoot the ground. So he takes his arrows, shoots 3 times, like, I'm done. And Elisha's like, what in the world? You should have shot 5 or 6 times. Then you would obliterate the Syrians. And so I came to Sir Michael and Jonathan, and I said, why don't we pray for something big? Not just big in general, but something quantifiably large that we can actually set a goal, set a high goal. And so I said, why don't we pray for, say, 20 decisions for baptism? And we said, okay. But Jonathan was like, what about 30? So we said, okay, 30. And then, so the next morning, it's fast. The next morning we brought it before our entire Cuban team because we had worship, and they seemed kind of skeptical about it. So we were like, okay, so now what? And so that Sabbath afternoon, we were sitting outside the house talking for about 2 hours, and we had this incredibly long conversation that I will not try to reproduce here because you would all get lost. But essentially, we went on a long discussion about, what should we pray for? Because we pray for things that are unrealistic. We decide that's what a miracle is. When we say that we believe in a miracle, then that's something that we as humans say, well, that's impossible, that's unrealistic. But at the same time, you want to ask for something that's appropriate. And we said, well, would this be something appropriate to ask for? And that was kind of our massively simplified train of thought there. Eventually, we brought it back before the Cuban team again, and we cleared up some miscommunications, and their conclusion was, yes, let's not just pray for 30 decisions, let's pray for at least 30 decisions for baptism. And so we prayed for that. My faith still wavered, and I especially felt nervous because I was doing the baptismal appeal, and I told God, I'm not worthy to do this. But I spent a lot of time praying that day. That was like 3 days later. Well, in the days between as well, but specifically on that day, I said, Lord, you're going to have to do this through me. And so as I made the appeal that night,
we had decision cards and then we had an appeal. So people started coming forward with the decision cards to hand them in, and I was completely thrown off because I wasn't expecting that. So I went into my appeal, I wasn't quite ready, and then I kind of went off script because I was completely thrown off, but then people just started coming forward, and as people were pouring forward from the center aisle, I was completely losing my train of thought. Jesus was losing his train of thought too, because there were just so many people pouring forward. And I'm like, wow, Lord, what is this? And so at the end of that, we had 16 adults came forward and 23 kids. That made it a total of 39. We prayed for 30, and God gave us 39.
Amen.
The next story Jonathan is going to share.
So, when we were like visiting people, we met this one lady named Ladies. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Anyway, so we invited her and gave her. Yeah, that one. That was the kid. That kid was so they started attending the meetings and they came pretty much every night, and then one night they didn't come. And then like the next day, like in the afternoon, she and her daughter came over to our house, and she was like crying and stuff and talking to like our helper and translator, and she was like telling them that her husband had like threatened her with like a knife and stuff, like if you go to those meetings, like what is it like? Yeah, basically. And so she still wanted to go, and so she asked for us to pray for her, and so we prayed for her, and we told her that anytime if she needed help, then just come to the Bible worker and his wife, and they can help her, and that we'll be praying for you. And then, like, what was it, like 2 days? Okay, like the next day, like she and her husband, and they were actually, it was me how God worked that out, because like her daughter had like gone missing with her aunt or somewhere, because they thought they had gone to the meeting, but they were gone, and so she and her husband came, and they were looking for her, and so actually he threatened her that he would come and with a knife to our group, right?
You did?
Like, or no.
Yeah, he said I would meet the person who invited my wife to this meeting.
Yeah.
Which was you, Nate.
And so he got to meet like our whole team, and it was neat because like we got to like meet, and he I guess found out that we weren't so cold or something. So and then he decided to let his wife come, and he said that he might come too, but it was just his wife. But still, it was neat how God like worked that out so that she could come back.
Amen.
So we're running out of time, but this is a house where we cleaned the man's name was Juan. It was a disgusting mess. This is after, even though it still looks bad. But anyway, make it quick. So we would go across the street because there was a person with a well there to get water for cleaning, and we had more people than there were tools. So that meant a lot of downtime, a lot of extra people going to the well to carry water more than was necessary. Anyway, on one of the trips to the well, I ran into this random dude. His name is Manuel, and he asked me, what time is it? I'm like, all right, so I told him the time. And then he said, do you live here in Vilocos? And I was thinking, do I look like I live here? Do I look like I'm from here? And I said, no, I'm from the United States. And he said, oh, so do you have family in Vilocos? I'm like, do I look like I have a family here? And I said, no. So I told him about the meetings, I invited him to come. I said, all right, so then he went on his way. And then several minutes, like maybe 20 minutes later, he came back and he was talking to Sir Michael.
Yeah, so he came and he was talking to me, and I was trying to understand, like, I can understand a fair bit of Spanish, but his speech was kind of, I could smell alcohol in his breath, and his speech was a little slurred, and I was trying to follow what he was saying, and the words, what I understood was money and smoke. And so I thought, wait, is he asking for money for cigarettes? I thought, no, that doesn't make sense. So then Joey came, and I asked Joey, and Joey listened, and we kind of came to the same conclusion, but also that didn't make sense, that he'd be asking for money for cigarettes. So we went and got Yune, our translator who's there with us, and she came in and talked with him. And it's funny that the guy was like, wow, I understand you. He's like, oh yeah, because I speak Spanish. But sure enough, yeah, he was asking for money for cigarettes. He knew that smoking is bad, but he was asking us for money for cigarettes. So that was a little odd. So our translator just kind of told him, you know, yes, we're here to help people. We're helping this family cleaning his house. That's something that he needs. But we're not going to give you money to get something that's harmful for you. But if you have a genuine need, something that you need help with, we're happy to help you.
So he came to the meeting that night, but then in the middle of it he left. And we found out that he received a call that his sister had died that night. And she lived in Havana, which was about 2 hours away, so they transported her over. And our house church was right next to the funeral home. So the next day, there was the funeral gathering. And funerals in Cuba, they're not really like a memorial service like that. You know, it's just people who just kind of gather, just kind of banter around and make jokes and eat, presumably. And so there were people gathered there, and we came to visit him, but he wasn't there. But he came over to our house church later. We had prayer for him, and he said, I can't come tonight because my wife and I are really tired, but we'll come tomorrow. And so the next night when he came, that was our presentation on the state of the dead. And so when I look back on that, I just saw how God orchestrated all those things. Like for me, first of all, randomly meeting him on the street, to the timing of events of how he came to the right meeting and all that. And he had when he met Jesus, and he had a burning passion for Jesus, and he came forward for the appeal for baptism, and he was one of the people who was baptized at the end, which you saw in the video at the beginning.
Amen.
You want to tell us what God said?
Yeah, we should probably wrap up.
You will forever be confused about that.
Okay, so this is a picture that was taken on the street. One thing we noticed when we were in Cuba is the difference between the picture the Cuban government wants to present to the world and the reality of what life is actually like in the country. Now we were on religious visas.
You want to say what actually happened?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I'm getting it. If we had been on tourist visas, we would only have been allowed to stay in designated tourist areas. But we were on religious visas, so we were able to stay in other places. But since we were far from the tourist areas, we were able to see a lot of what our translators told us. This is the real Cuba. And this is one example of that. One day, this old warehouse spontaneously collapsed. Now, it wasn't exactly a surprise. It was a very old building, and everyone knew it wasn't safe. So it collapsed. Thankfully, there was no one inside. Although, as our translator told us, it's not uncommon for people to actually be living in these structures and be inside when they collapse. So we were there watching this, and we were starting to take pictures, and Jesus came up to us and said, you know, maybe it's better not to take pictures because people will see you taking them, and they might think you're taking them for propaganda.
Which we are.
Yeah. They were kind of right about that. But anyway, he said they don't want people to see the real Cuba. And that got me thinking about not just countries, but people as well. How we like to put on a front to the world and say, this is who I am, and we're hiding our real selves inside. And just as Cuba has been ravaged by decades of communism, we have been ravaged by sin. But we like to put on the good front, and sometimes it's easier to put on a good front than to fix what's actually wrong inside. Just like it's easier for the Cuban government to fix up a few nice tourist locations than to actually do the hard work that needs to be done to rebuild their economy. And so I just want that to be our takeaway lesson. You know, as Jesus said, cleanse not just the outside, but the inside. Allow Christ to work in our hearts and do that hard work of reform from the inside out. So we don't have to put up a false front, because we have Christ shining from the inside out.
Amen.
Thanks for listening. And Jonathan, would you like to close with prayer?
Dear Jesus, I want to thank you that we were able to share about our experience in Cuba. I ask that you please cleanse us from the inside and help us to be the same